This is a good movie podcast with Katie and Joe.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to This is a Good Movie Podcast. I am one of two hosts here, Joe Bates, and we've got...
Katie Hetledge.
That's two hosts, folks. That's how you do a podcast. Two hosts, no more, no less. I know Bill Burr's only got the one, and there's a lot of ones where it's like 5 comics in shorts sitting on comfy chairs talking to each other as lean back into the chair as possible, so I don't even know how you're getting any energy in the podcast.
Maybe they're doing it as like because they're wearing shorts, so maybe it's a little peekaboo situation.
It's a little peekaboo situation
of like, will you see something? Will you not? And so they're using that to keep people hooked.
Wow. Okay, so your thought process is that something's gonna poke out of the shorts, and that's what you're like kind of thinking why people would watch it. Yet we just watched The Brutalist, and everything that was nude in that movie you
I hated.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to see anything.
Okay, all right.
I'm not watching those podcasts. I'm just thinking maybe that's why other people are watching it, since you loved The Brutalist and lots of people are loving it. Like, I'm willing to admit when people like something and it's just not for me.
Yeah, I mean, just so you know.
And that's most nudity in films, I guess, except for Jason Segel in Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Yeah, you loved that.
I didn't love it, but it was funny.
We are, just so everybody knows, still making our rounds in the Oscar movies. We'll have our Oscar podcast up in probably
soon,
like a month.
We got to listen. 2 things got to happen. 1, we have to know who the nominees actually are, and then 2, we have to finish watching the movies.
So I think
based on that list,
right now, what it looks like possible Best Picture nominees that we have not seen are September 5th,
September 5,
Nickel Boys, and Anora. But I do think we're going to see Anora pretty soon.
We also have to see The Last Showgirl.
Oh, yeah, because I think Pamela Anderson might get nominated for that.
Yeah, I want to watch that. And maybe the song again, and then maybe Miley will perform it. I hope so.
I assume Miley will perform at the thing. She seems to be the only big name with a song this year.
I guess. With an original song.
Yeah.
Because Wicked doesn't count, and I guess Bob Dylan doesn't count either.
Bob Dylan never counted.
Bobby Dylan.
Yeah, remember that classic time where Timothy Chalamet says, "I'm Bobby Dylan"?
That's what he's going to perform on SNL.
That's
his classic hit, "I'm Bobby Dylan."
Timmy and Timmy. Katie, do you have any of the classic movie news?
Yes, I do. So
Movie
yesterday, we're getting ready to watch The Brutalist, 3.5-hour long film.
With an intermission.
With an intermission. And I don't remember what caused you to say this, but you turn to me and you go, wow, I'm shocked that there hasn't been a David Bowie biopic.
Yes.
And then you go on to say, also a Prince biopic. They haven't made one of those either. And that got me thinking, what is going on with that? Because both of these artists have passed away. It seems like now is probably the time to make those because there are still enough people who like love them.
This came from a commercial we saw in the previews where this guy looked literally just like David Bowie.
Like a young David Bowie. That's right. Yes. Okay. How insane is this? We're sitting in Denver, Colorado in a theater to watch a movie, and all of a sudden there is a commercial for a suit store based in London, as if people living in Denver are going to be like, oh, I got to go to London to buy a suit. Like, we're not your target audience. Yes, we have an international airport, but we're not.
Yes, we have an international airport.
That's not who we are as a people. And so, and yes, I'm saying I did move here in June. I'm claiming it. I just think maybe someone needs to like figure out their audiences a little bit more, because that ad was wasted on us, except for the fact that one of the models did look like a young David Bowie. And now we are talking about my movie news.
So what is the movie news you found?
In 2020, a film came out called Stardust, which is about David Bowie and his like alter ego Ziggy Stardust.
Yes, but that's not a fictional movie. That movie, I believe, is like a documentary. I saw that movie with
Well,
Jerry. Oh no, I saw. Maybe I saw a different. There was a big David Bowie documentary movie that came out while we lived in New York, and when my buddy Jerry was in town, we went and saw that. So maybe that is a different movie.
it's a musical drama, came out in 2020. It has a 19% on Rotten Tomatoes,
Oh,
which
that
is
stuff.
probably why we didn't see it. Overview is singer David Bowie reinvents himself as Ziggy Stardust while touring America to promote his new album, The Man Who Sold the World. I don't think David Bowie is in this. I don't think it's a documentary. It is starring Johnny Flynn as Bowie.
Then yeah, there was a documentary a year or two after that. That was like, it was like 2.5 to 3 hours long. It was a long movie.
Okay.
But this is what you're saying is different than what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, Mark Maron is in this.
I can't imagine. That's such a weird movie to be made that no one hear about. Maybe there were some talks it would be good, but
Yeah, I just wonder if maybe there was something else happening in 2020 that like everyone else was focused on, and so we missed movie
the
premieres.
Pauly Shore Pinocchio movie.
Yeah, that had to be it, or it was Tiger King. Okay, and then my other movie news is there is a Prince musical movie in the works from director Ryan Coogler of Black Panther.
That is gonna be awesome.
I don't know anything else about it. It would be a jukebox musical, so using Prince's songs, but yeah.
I recently saw an Andy Serkis thing
Okay.
where Andy Serkis was talking about being in Black Panther with Martin Freeman, and that Ryan Coogler called them the two Tolkien white boys.
That's funny.
And then he says, I just want to make sure, because there was a scene between Andy Serkis and Martin Freeman. He goes, I've never directed two white people talking to each other. So just bear with me on this. Yeah. Ryan Coogler's cool. Did that other movie come out that he did that had Michael B. Jordan
I think so. The one where they're like in the
in the
house
barn?
and people are like coming. Yeah.
I want to see that, but I guess I don't hear anyone talking about that movie. I had one quick movie news because I want to say this because I'll probably forget it for next week. And then one personal news that I'm kind of upset with Katie so far.
Oh, Sinners
not
comes
mentioning.
out in April.
Oh, in April. Okay,
Yeah, we've got
movie.
time.
That movie looks good.
Yeah.
So I got some movie news and a personal. Quick movie
Okay.
news: Alien Romulus is coming out for streaming and on DVD.
Uh-huh.
And the director of that movie, whose name now just leaves my memory, he asked the studio for more money to fix CGI issues he saw in the original movie. So he's like, now that we're releasing it, I want to get this right. And the studio agreed to do it.
Wow.
He's like, we missed it because of the rush production, and I just want to fix issues,
Okay.
which I think is a really cool thing.
Yeah, I wonder if people, I mean, we didn't see it. I wonder if people who did see it are going to like watch it again to see what's fixed.
Yeah, I just thought that was a cool thing a director to do. I'm assuming a lot of people liked it, so I would imagine they would go and see it again. Because it's kind of like Alien is kind of a rewatchable franchise.
I wouldn't know. I haven't seen any.
Yeah, well, maybe in the future.
Maybe.
And then some personal news. As you all know, what day this podcast comes out, and you guys are all wondering why you're listening to this podcast, and I understand that. And I want to thank our fans for sending me such great happy birthday wishes. Unlike my wife so far in this episode, that releases on January 22nd.
Okay, well, what if something happens and then this doesn't get released on January 22nd? Then won't you look like a jackwagon?
Don't you look like a jackwagon? Yeah, but anyways, thank you so much for your birthday wishes and your birthday checks. All right, are you ready to talk about today's movie?
I guess.
Do you have any idea what it is? Do you have any clue what it is?
I wrote down this movie is about the game Clue. It's like if Clue was real life. If Clue came to life, it's a murder mystery.
This might be the most exact description someone's gotten without seeing the movie, but also
Well, I have played Clue before,
you have played.
so I know who like the main people are.
I honestly don't remember the last time I've actually played the game Clue.
Well, I realized that as we were watching because I was like, does the Clue game have secret passageways?
Yes.
Yeah, which I told myself, yes, it does. And then I was like, how do you find out who's the killer in Clue? And I think it's just process of elimination.
Yeah, you pull a lot of
Right.
cards, and throughout pulling the cards, you're like,
You
well,
realize
this can't be
which-
in the packet.
Yeah, which card is not there, and that is your killer. Mm-hmm. Which, as I say that now, it's really coming together with how this movie works.
Well, all the secret corridors where it goes like, there's a lot to go on to the thing, but I'll just kind of go into like some little fun facts quickly before we get into each character. All of the little corridors are the exact things. The corridors go from those certain places.
Oh, like
in
the
game.
rooms match?
Yeah. So the rooms
Amazing.
match in the order of the board game.
Okay.
And then all the secret passages are going to the same exact ones, like the kitchen to the conservatory or whatever. Those are the exact same passages in the game.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, there's a lot of little detail about this. This movie came out December 13th, 1985. This is a little over a month before I was born.
Okay.
The budget for this movie was $15 million. What do you think the box office was, Katie?
I hope it made money. I'm going to say $100 million.
This is the second movie we've discussed in this podcast that did not get back to its budget with the box office. This movie made $14.6 million in the box office.
Oh my gosh.
It bombed hard. Critics did not like this movie.
What?
Yeah, critics thought the movie they thought all the characters are pretty flat. They hated the middle act. And they also hated this gimmick that the movie did, which was it released 3 different versions of the movie out to different theaters with 3 different endings.
That's hilarious.
So you could go to a different theater and see a different ending.
And then in the one we watched, we saw all 3 endings.
3 of the endings.
Wow.
So it was like the last kind of major gimmick that a movie did for like a theater gimmick. I watched like a person talk about this. There used to be gimmicks that they did where like there was a movie called The Tingler and you can get into a vibrating seat while the movie was going on.
No, thank you.
There was another movie that was like a horror movie and every theater installed a giant skeleton that would drop down from the ceiling in the middle of the movie.
What?
Yeah. So there was these little gimmick things, and this was like, those were in the 70s, and this is like 1985, and this just bombed hard. Siskel and Ebert like really hated it, and they thought the best ending in the movie, which ending do you think they thought the best ending was?
The one with Scarlett
Yeah.
as everything. I guess it's like it felt the cleanest
Yeah.
of the 3. It was like, okay, that pretty much accounts for everything. Sure. Everything else was like, and this, and this, and this.
The Peacock, Mrs. Peacock was the weakest, and then
I agree.
the other one is just everyone's the killer. Okay, whatever.
Everyone is a killer.
They
all killed someone.
There was a 4th ending that wasn't made that was discussed.
Okay.
That was Wadsworth. He committed all the murders. And he reveals he poisoned the champagne they've been drinking that was like a slow-acting poison, leaving no witnesses. And everyone dies. And he escapes. And the cops come charging in. He gets into a car and gets out. And in the middle of driving, attack dogs that were in the backseat jump out and kill him.
Whoa.
And the guy was like, this might be too dark for this movie.
Yeah, for a movie about murder.
But yeah, this is Clue. I think it'll be easier if we just kind of go through each character.
Okay.
We can start with the person who is the killer in the first ending, Miss Scarlet.
Sure.
Miss Scarlet was played by Leslie Ann Warren, who wasn't in a lot of things. Her career is kind of middling. It's not anything crazy. This role was originally planned for Carrie Fisher.
Oh, interesting.
And she had the role, but she went into rehab for alcohol and drug abuse.
Oh,
So they couldn't use her.
bummer. She would have been great.
I thought Leslie Ann Warren was pretty good in it.
Yeah, she was.
Miss Scarlet was a leader of a brothel, or
she owned like a brothel / escort service.
It's not called pimp. What's the lady version? Like, what's the Moulin Rouge mother? House mom?
I don't know.
Yeah, but anyway, she runs a prostitution ring in DC.
Yeah, everyone's from DC.
Everyone is from DC.
Did you want to give like an overview of the movie for anyone who hasn't actually seen it?
Yeah,
I mean, I think everyone should pause this, go watch it. It's a quick watch, come back.
Very quick watch. Basically is a movie. 6 people are brought to a house. 6 to 7 people are brought to a house. They don't know why. They've been invited through a mysterious letter, and they find out they're being invited by the person who's been blackmailing all of them, Mr. Body. He shows up, and they realize that's what their tie is. They're all being blackmailed.
For different reasons. Everyone has an individual secret that he knows.
Yeah, and it's all sort of government related.
Evidence against. Yeah, they're all like from DC or in the government, like work for the government.
Some sort of tie to the government. And then they were all invited by the butler Wadsworth, who works for Mr. Body because he's upset at what's going on. And it's kind of a catch the guy blackmailing each other. Everybody confess to their crimes. Let's move on with our lives. Is kind of the story told to everybody.
And he said, I've called the police. So if you all like confess, then you can accuse him of blackmail and the police will be here in 45 minutes and they'll arrest him. And then Mr. Body is like, or you can all kill the butler, kill Wadsworth, and then no one has to know your secrets. And he gives them all murder weapons.
Gives them all the same murder weapons and clue. They're all given pseudonym names, which is the clue names, like Professor Plum, Colonel Mustard.
Yeah, it's not their real names. I thought that was so smart. I was like, what a creative way, because it's not that realistic for people to have those names and to all be in the same place.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, so smart to tie it in that way. How clever. Yeah, so they don't know who each other is, so they don't trust each other. And then pretty much a series of murders happen, and they're trying to figure out who keeps doing the murders. And
Mr. Body gets murdered, the cook gets murdered, the maid gets murdered, some random guy who shows up but actually is tied to them gets murdered.
A cop gets murdered.
There's 6 murders in total.
Singing Telegram gets murdered.
Oh, so yeah, Singing Telegram Lady. Singing Telegram Lady, she was a rhythm guitarist for the Go-Go band.
Random.
Go-Go's. Yep. And then Mr. Body, who was played by Lee Ving.
Okay.
He is the lead man of a punk band called Fear.
Okay.
And I saw an interview with Michael McKean that Lee Ving's voice is not his voice. It's like looped in a different voice for him when he talks. That's why it's so weird when he talks.
Why? Like at that point,
no one knew why.
Just hire someone else. That's so weird.
Yeah, it's a very odd thing. I think the director, I couldn't confirm this anywhere, but I think the director picked him because his real name is Lee Ving, and it was a pun. Because he's leaving the movie soon.
Sure.
What a weird choice.
Exhausting. Anyway, so they got to figure out who did the murders before the cops show up.
And a variety of antics ensue as they try and figure out while murders keep happening. This movie doesn't do a great job of making it clear who the murderer is. It just kind of tells you at the end.
Yeah, the whole time I was like listening and looking for clues, obviously. So there would be moments where someone would kind of respond to someone else a certain way, or be like, don't I know you? Or like how they discover something in the house feels like a clue. But it's very different from like all of the Agatha Christie movies that we've been watching lately.
Yes.
What is it? Detective Poirot?
Yeah, Detective Poirot.
Yeah.
Hercule Poirot.
Yeah, I feel like in those ones you kind of, it unfolds and you sort of discover it along with the detective. Whereas this one, you're like, I don't know. I have some ideas about who people might be, but you're also like, I don't even know what I'm trying to figure out. Am I trying to figure out who these people are, how they know each other, or like who killed who, or is it one person? Is it many person? So you're kind of just like along for the ride with
Yeah, you're
this one.
slowly learning their backgrounds a little bit, but it's still not very helpful in what the issue is.
Well, I wanted to ask because at the end, when they reveal the murders in one way or another, oftentimes they're like, whoever wasn't in this room with us when this happened is the murderer. Because like we were all here and someone slipped out and went and killed the cook. So whoever wasn't here, that's murder, which now makes sense based on how the game of Clue actually works of like, whichever card isn't here, that's, you know, the key. Yeah. When you watched it again, knowing the various endings, do you notice if like
not
someone
at
isn't?
All.
Okay, so pretty much everyone, they're not like dropping clues along the way.
I don't think they're dropping clues along the way because I think the only person that's not in the room when he says like whoever wasn't in the room is the murderer is actually Wadsworth.
Interesting.
So I think that the plan was it was the butler the whole time. The butler did it was created in like 1935 in a different book, so it's like a trope already by the time this movie comes out. Mm-hmm. Another thing I don't want to forget to say is that all the characters showed up in different cars, and all the cars are colored as their character because each character has a color code in the game Clue, and all their cars correspond with that color.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's hard because you don't really see the cars that well.
Yeah, and it's mostly dark when they arrive.
Yeah. 1930 novel The Door. That's where the butler that it comes from.
Okay.
So back to Miss Scarlet. Leslie Ann Warren, who I did find out was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. I can't figure out which movie it was. All three women in the movie were nominated for Best Supporting Actress.
Oh, wow.
I thought she was very solid. It seems like you've seen her in a bunch of things and you don't know what it is.
I felt bad for her because she just kept getting like felt up by the guys.
It's a very sexual movie.
So much touching.
There's a lot of touching.
I was like, stop touching these strangers that you just met. I mean, I know it takes place in the 50s, but come on.
That's just the way it was. She was wearing a corset in that movie, so like anytime they weren't filming, she had to just lean on something because it was like suffocating her.
Oh gosh.
Because they'd all play pool in the billiards hall that they had there while they were waiting around.
Yeah, that's fun.
And she couldn't do it because of the corset.
Oh. Did they film in an actual house? Is it like one big house that they filmed in?
Everything filmed in the house is staged. It's at Paramount.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of the decor they pulled from Theodore Roosevelt's estate.
What?
A lot of the decor used in the movie was pulled from the Theodore Roosevelt estate.
Like his actual estate, or like
a lot of
there
the
was
paintings.
A movie filmed about him and they pulled it from that.
No, his actual estate. So a lot of the furniture and paintings and everything.
Shouldn't that be in like a presidential library? That's
I don't know.
So random. And also, I assume they filmed this out in L.A.
Yeah, Paramount Studios. Outside the
Teddy Roosevelt's a New Yorker.
Well, they got a big truck and drove it over.
That makes no sense to me.
And then a lot of this set was used later in the TV show Dynasty. They reused it as a hotel. There was also all the portrait of presidents that they showed in the movie. All presidents that were assassinated. Lincoln, McKinley, and a third one.
JFK?
No, not JFK.
Because that this takes place in the 50s,
that would have been very strange to throw JFK in there. Maybe it makes sense to kind of just go through. So, like Miss Scarlet, there's not a lot of detail, a lot of funny lines given from her. She kind of is quippy. There's a lot of like the dialogue in this movie. I feel like you mentioned it while watching. It seems like a British comedy.
Yeah, I thought the dialogue and the comedy to it felt very British. Of one, a lot of physical comedy, and then which to me is kind of a British style, and then also a lot of the like quips that they would make, like offhanded, like just offhand remarks that aren't really part of the dialogue, but it's just a funny little like aside. And that also is like British comedy to me. So that's why I thought maybe this was a British film Or like the writer is British or the director is British?
No, the director has made a bunch of movies. The director was, the story was by John Landis, who did like Three Amigos, Animal House. Great comic writer. Directed by Jonathan Lynn, who also helped write this movie.
John Landis and Jonathan Lynn.
Yes, John. Good night, John.
I think Jonathan Lynn is British.
Is he? That makes sense because Jonathan Lynn went to high school with Tim Curry. So,
Well,
yeah, now that you say
Okay.
that, no, that makes sense. They're very
he
British.
also directed My Cousin Vinny.
Oh, good for him.
Not a British film, I would say.
Very un-British.
Okay, well, I'm glad we solved that. I just felt like immediately from the start, because it's just a bit off and weird, and like that is British comedy to me. It was giving a little Faulty Towers.
That makes sense. Yeah. I agree with that. John Cleese, there's loose information that John Cleese was considered for the Butler role, but ones that were actually considered for the Butler role, Leonard Rossiter,
Don't know.
don't know, but he died before filming convinced. So they couldn't use him.
Under suspicious circumstances.
Maybe. The second choice was Rowan Atkinson,
Oh, sure.
but decided he wasn't well known enough. Mr. Bean hadn't really hit America yet. So they used Tim Curry, who was just somebody that Jonathan went to high school with, and he had already done Rocky Horror Picture Show at this time.
Oh, okay.
So he was known enough to use for this role.
Yeah, it's so interesting to watch a young Tim Curry because, like, I was trying to think.
So much energy.
First, impression of him, I believe, was from the Home Alone movie where
okay.
he's the hotel manager, right? In
Yeah.
Home Alone 2.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's how I think of Tim Curry. So then when people talk about Tim Curry, I'm like, but he's not. He's like, stuffy and like a bad guy. But now having seen like Rocky Horror and now this, I'm like, oh, there is a different energy and charm to him.
We're used to the goatee era, Tim Curry.
Yeah, which is not as good. He looks like a well-nourished Rami Malek a little bit in this.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, we can get to him next. There's so much energy in that character and what he is doing and just running. Like the last scene was just running around the place.
Yeah, great physical comedy. I was a little bit, when he starts off, he's like, I know who the killer is, which only kind of. It's like, I know who the killer is, but in order to tell you, we have to like retrace our steps. And when they say that, they could not be more literal of like, they are running around that house now, literally going beat by beat of the film. And I was like, am I about to rewatch this movie? And in some ways, yes, I did. That's like a significant chunk of time that they are just replaying
with
what
no
we already
information
watched.
added.
No, they're just recounting things. And again, all he's saying is like, if someone wasn't in this room, then they were the murderer. And I'm like, I don't know who that was. You have to tell me. But I love the various twists at the end of like, he is the blackmailer. He's Mr. Body, or like he's working with the FBI. Each time that they revealed a Tim Curry twist, I was like, of course. Even though they were like contradictory twists.
Well, the first ending, he just figured it out.
Right.
And then the second one, he works for the FBI. And the third one, he's actually the mastermind behind all of it. To me, the third ending makes the most sense. That they're all bad people. They all murdered somebody.
For their own gain. And then Michael McKean is actually working. He's the one working with the FBI.
You said that Tim Curry and Michael McKean were your favorite.
Yeah,
people.
so I wrote down initially, because this cast is great. You've got Christopher Lloyd, you have Madeline Kahn, like lots of people in this cast. But I felt early into the film that Michael McKean and Tim Curry popped in a way that the others didn't. Both in like their characters and the various layers to their characters, which I do agree some of the other characters felt a little one note, which it's a board game, so that makes sense. But I felt like they had the most dynamic characters, and I thought their acting was also the strongest. So I said that from the jump. And then for them to both kind of have these really fun twists at the end with both of their characters, I was like, haha, I knew there was a reason that they were popping on screen, and that is why. So I was happy to clock that.
Yeah. No, it was you're like, they're the most interesting. They've got to keep being the most interesting.
I was just like, there's something about them.
So the ones you didn't find interesting. So Eileen Brennan played Mrs. Peacock, who was the old
She was
lady.
annoying. I don't blame the actor, just the character was annoying.
Yeah, you wanted that person to die.
I don't want anyone to die.
Okay, all right. I mean, in a movie, it's okay to want somebody to die, I think.
I never want anyone to die, even in a movie.
Oh my gosh. How do you go into anything? Like, what is the perfect movie? Everyone meets each other and they say hi and they go, I think we're in love, and then they hug and then they're in love.
Yes, the perfect film is Accepted, starring Justin Long.
Oh my God.
Just kidding.
Yeah. So she didn't love The Brutalist.
I thought it was good, and I do hope it wins cinematography.
Yeah. I think
But there are some pieces of it that were hard for me to watch and that I felt were a bit gratuitous. And so like were hard to watch and didn't need to be in the film.
you should not watch
It
this.
needs to be one or the other. It can be gratuitous but fun to watch, like this movie, or it can be hard to watch but has to be in the movie for movie
gotcha.
reasons. And I felt like they just were getting a little, and I'm sorry, but we probably could have cut 30 minutes off of that movie. And then you don't need an intermission.
This is The Brutalist, not The Clue. If you cut 30 minutes out of Clue, it is a TV show.
If you cut 30 minutes off of Clue, you haven't opened the box.
I mean, think about that, though. So we watched an hour and 30 minutes. That was all 3 endings. Now, the endings were pretty quick, but if you take those away, you go into the movies, you're watching like an hour 15, hour 20 movie.
Yeah, but it's 1985.
Time was different then.
No, I feel like movies were generally shorter. You didn't have as many 2.5 hour long films. That wasn't
Yeah.
like the norm.
I would be interested to look that up because I think in the 60s and 70s there were some pretty long. Like Easy Rider is like a famous film in the 70s. I think that's like almost 3 hours long.
Okay.
But no, that's possibly a good point. I don't know. Yeah, Eileen Brennan and Mrs. Peacock, she's kind of supposed to be like, she won't admit to anything terrible that she's done, but she's clearly not good.
Yeah, her husband is a senator and she's like taking bribes on his behalf.
Yeah. So it's, there's not, I mean, there is, the critics have a point on some of these characters being pretty flat and two-dimensional.
Totally.
Christopher Lloyd is Professor Plum.
Yeah, it was a very muted performance from Christopher Lloyd.
This same year, Back to the Future came out.
Well, that's where his energy went.
So he didn't get this role from that movie. He got this role from being in Taxi.
I haven't seen that.
It's a TV show.
Okay.
With Danny DeVito, Christopher Lloyd, Tony Danza.
Sure.
You never heard of this show?
Well, there's Taxi, the show, and then there's Taxi Driver, the movie.
Yes, Taxi Driver, the movie.
I haven't seen either of them.
And then there's what is the Taxi movie of Queen Latifah and Jimmy Fallon?
Taxis? I don't know.
There's a Taxi movie that I did not watch. Yeah, I mean he is just a ravenous
Yeah, he's a psychiatrist. He plays
Professor Plum.
Professor Plum. He's a psychiatrist who was like got his license taken away because he was sleeping with his patients, which is frowned upon. And then I was like, maybe someone here is actually the patient that he was sleeping with. Like, how does that tie in? And so for a while I was like, maybe that's Yvette, the maid. And so they're like working together. But then I think this is what made it kind of difficult for me to pick up on clues in this film is that most of the murder, I believe, was not premeditated. Actually, I don't think any of the murder was premeditated.
They're like, I know that person, die.
Yeah, it was very reactionary. Like, I don't believe anyone showed up to the house that night with the intention to murder people.
No.
And that does make it hard to then, because
Outside
I kept trying
Mr.
to.
Body wanted someone to get murdered.
Yes, yes. So then I kept trying to figure out, like, how does their background tie into if they're the murderer or not? And for the most part, it didn't.
Yeah, communism is a red herring.
Yeah, that was very funny. Red herring.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did find that challenging. I mean, I think ultimately, when we're talking about like the critics not liking this movie, it's a movie of Clue.
Yeah.
Like, what are your expectations for that?
I didn't find this out, but I'd be interested in. I think this is the first movie based on a board game. The rights for this movie were bought like 4 years before this movie came out, and they were trying to figure it out. So I would not be shocked that this is the first movie that's based on a board game. I don't think there's a Monopoly movie. I don't think there's a Parcheesi movie that I'm aware of. Jumanji was in the 90s, and that's not a real board game to begin with.
Yeah, you've got Battleship,
That was in the 2000s, yeah.
Ouija, recent, not really a board game.
Yeah, I never got the Ouija as a board game talk.
I don't know. I'm just thinking of like
Yeah,
boards.
no, that's not. This isn't aimed at you.
It's aimed at the ghosts.
It's aimed at the ghost. Oh, my hand's moving. What are you talking about?
Oops, sorry. Anyway, so that's Professor Plum. He was fine.
Yeah, I was expecting a little bit more from him, and it seemed like a muted performance.
Well, I think in some ways it's tough when you have an entire cast of character actors.
Well,
You need some levels.
I think one person who made the most out of the little lines that she had was Madeline Kahn as Mrs. White.
Her line reads were hilarious only because they were so inconsistent. Yeah. It sounded, every time she said a line, it was like the first time she's ever said those words in that order before. And sometimes she seemed to surprise herself with how she said a line, which was like, there's like one moment where she's standing by her fireplace and then like breaks her glass as she's saying something. It's like really funny. Yeah, she was nuts.
Madeline Kahn is great. We haven't watched Bleeding Saddles. That'll be a movie we'll watch down the line. She is fantastic in that. It's just she makes the most out of a small role. Mm-hmm. When she is delivering the line about murdering her husband, and she's saying, "And there are flames at the side of my flames, the heat from the..."
Oh, yeah. What was that?
Fully improvised.
Wow, shocking.
It's so funny because it's just like... It doesn't go anywhere, but that's part. She's like losing her mind as she's talking, and it's why she's been a killer. Like she's killed all her husbands and everything in the past. But the fact that she told Wadsworth, she's like, "When we're alone, I will kill you," and then and then they get partnered up later. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts on Madeline Kahn?
I always found it confusing that Mrs. White wears all black.
Yeah. I mean, that was just a choice, I assume.
That's a choice.
And we'll get to the last two characters. Martin Mull as Colonel Mustard, who is basically the idiot, like almost the comic relief, I think, of the movie.
I don't think he's very funny in this. It wasn't the Martin Mull I know. That's what I'll say. I mean, we almost didn't recognize him.
Yeah,
when he showed up, I was like,
confused.
I was like, oh, Martin Mull. And you were like, no, that's not him. And I was like, I think it is, but he's so young and like just looks so different. He had like these chubby cheeks that he lost in his old age. But yeah, his character was...
gets confused constantly when they're talking to him.
Yeah.
And he admits to being stupid without knowing he's admitting to being stupid.
Right. They like backed him into a corner with dialogue a few times. And those are funny moments. But for the most part, he seems to sort of just stumble his way through the movie. His whole blackmail thing is that he was a client of...
war profiteer.
Well, he was a war profiteer. And then also a client of Miss Scarlett's.
Yep.
And this was like the one thing that I clocked when Yvette gets killed and she's like, they all know me. They know all of me. I was like, oh, she's the one in the photos.
Yeah.
So they have these photos of Colonel Mustard and
Yvette.
Yvette, but they don't say that initially. They're like, it's you and a woman. And so that was the one thing that I was like, aha, I figured that out before they revealed it.
Well, in that scene where he goes, so you were a patron of Miss Scarlett's like place, and he goes, tell her I wasn't. He goes, no, he wasn't. And they say it again, and she goes, no, he wasn't. They go, double negative is proof positive.
Yep.
And he goes, ah, damn it.
I think my favorite kind of recurring joke is when the butler would be like, long story short, while telling a story, and they'd be like,
Too late.
because he's already been telling a story for a long period of time.
Yeah, they did that a couple times. There was a lot of like kind of repeating like wordplay jokes that I thought was done well. And then lastly, I think honestly your favorite character is Michael McKean, who is being blackmailed for being gay.
Yeah, in the 50s. Well, that's what we think. It turns out at the end that actually he works for the FBI and he's not gay at all. But
he keeps being accident prone throughout the movie, and he keeps apologizing and doing a lot of like physical comedy. Michael McKean, a young Michael McKean, I'm gonna be honest, good looking man.
Yeah, he was cute. I loved his little glasses. So
very
fun.
very charming in that movie.
There was a funny moment where they're splitting up to search the various levels of the house, and Yvette is like, who will go with me? And all of the guys are like, I will. And he's like, no, thanks.
Yeah, I thought that was a very funny, but he, not knowing who the killer is and everything, you can kind of tell that Michael McKean's character in this movie is good. Like you never feel that he is bad, where everybody else feels like
they're a little bit shady. Well, to be fair, everyone's various like secrets that they're being blackmailed for. It's like you slept with a patient, or you are, you have like a cop on your payroll that you're bribing, or you killed your husband. Like those are pretty bad.
100%, they're pretty bad, but it's
and
also
his is not bad.
But it's also the interactions between the characters themselves, because he's never like mean to anyone either.
Right, I agree.
Outside, and then the part where they're trying to solve the stuff, I think one of my favorite physical gags in it is Tim Curry uses the secret corridor to act like he's the dead cook in the kitchen, and he falls on Michael McKean's arm, and Michael just drops him immediately, just tired of this whole event. He's Mr. Green. I'm sorry, I've been calling him Michael McKean the whole time, but he's Mr. Green.
That rhymes.
And then at the very end of the third ending, he shoots Tim Curry, reveals he's the FBI guy this whole time.
I was shocked that he actually like shot Tim Curry.
Yeah, I too was shocked he shot Jim Curry. I forgot he shot Tim Curry. I thought they all just got arrested. And
so I guess they say that's the real ending, right?
Yeah, I guess that would, because that's how they display the three endings. But here's what really happened. And then the last line, I'm going to go home and sleep with my wife. But yeah, that's Clue. We have some side characters that are just kind of the motorist who just shows up, who was Colonel Mustard's driver, got killed. The singing telegram, who was the former patient of Professor Plum, got killed. The cop who was on Miss Scarlett's payroll got killed. Leaving, who has played Mr. Body, turns out he was Wadsworth's butler, and Wadsworth was Mr. Body in the third ending. And then the cook, who is just a former cook for Mrs. Peacock.
Yep.
So overall, I gotta ask you, what are your takeaways from this movie?
Okay, here are my takeaways. I'm gonna say this is a good take because we kind of talked about it already, which is last year, well, 2 years ago now, 2023, Barbie comes out and everyone is like, oh my gosh, now we're going to make all of these toy movies. Like Mattel's going to make all these toy movies because Barbie did so well. And we're going to have all these movies based on toys, as if we haven't had that before. And I find that to be Clue erasure.
Well, as of last year, Hasbro's been trying to buy back the rights to Clue so they can do a movie.
Okay, well, that is my bad take, which is that we should remake Clue. It's been 40 years. I think you can remake it. The reason I'm saying that's a bad take is because I don't always care for remakes when it feels like the original still stands up. I feel like this one, there's no real reason to remake it other than I think it would be fun with a new cast.
Well, Ryan Reynolds was supposedly attached to it like in the late 2010s.
No, thank you.
But I think you don't remake the movie, you just make another Clue movie.
Yeah, that works for me. And I'm also saying it's a bad take because I recognize that the last film I picked was a remake. But I think it was an example of a really good remake that felt fresh and different from the other version. So I think I would absolutely go see it if they did another Clue.
So that's your bad take. Your Clue erasure, was that good or normal?
Good.
What's your normal takeaway?
Just that murder mystery is a really great film genre, and it's...
You can't go wrong. I honestly, I really love murder mysteries. A murder mystery I read by Agatha Christie, and then there were none, is one I would really love to see as a movie, even though I know what happens in it.
I hope they keep making those. Who's the guy that's in all? Who's playing the detective? What's his actor?
Hercule Poirot.
Yeah,
is
Kenneth
Branagh.
Kenneth Branagh. Yeah, I know that at this point he is basically like self-financing those films because I think the last couple didn't do especially well.
Well, it's that big windfall from Belfast.
Right. Yeah. But I just really hope that they keep making them. I love the murder mystery genre. If they put out more, please everyone go watch them because I want them to continue. I just think it's like it doesn't get old.
Every 3 years, I think you should have one Hercule Poirot movie and then one Blanc, the Daniel Craig
Benoit Blanc
Knives
movie.
Out. Yeah, I think that should cover the murder mysteries for a while.
They've got a third Knives Out coming out.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll be excited to see it. Yeah. Who would you cast Wally as in this movie?
That is tough because I don't want him to die.
Okay.
So
that rules out a few people.
Eliminate a lot of
6
people.
to be exact. Maybe 7.
I also don't want Wally to be a murderer.
Okay, that rules out some more people. We're kind of down to 2 characters at this point.
Yes, which is why I think I'm going to cast him as the FBI agent at the end who shows up pretending to be a Mormon.
Kind of
Jehovah's
Mormon.
Witness?
Sort of, yeah. Maybe even
But then
cult-like.
secretly is the FBI.
Yeah.
So that'll be Wally.
That reminds me, every time they opened the door and had a group conversation with a stranger, I mean, they were murderers. They were just clear murderers. Would you walk into a house with any interactions they had in the way they talked?
No.
You would just be like, it's raining. I'll walk this one home. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have yes, you can come into, just go into this room. We'll lock you in there.
Yeah. They're all dressed fancy. You know something's going on.
Something
not good.
I have a feeling I know the answer to this, Katie.
Okay.
But this is the premise of the podcast. Everybody is always concerned how it'll end.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a good movie?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I thought it was good. I don't care what the critics say.
Critics didn't love it. Siskel and Ebert didn't like it. Ebert said, you know what's one way you don't have to worry about which ending you see? Don't go see it.
Wow. Rude.
But it has a big cult following. I mean, people love this movie nowadays.
I also get, if people went to this movie thinking it was going to be a movie for children, I don't think it is.
I don't think anyone went into this movie thinking it would be a movie for children.
If it's based on a game, don't you think it's for children?
It's a game about murder.
I played this as a child.
Okay. Maybe that's fine.
Did you only play Clue as an adult?
No, but I'm just saying,
Loser.
if you're making a murder mystery movie, I don't think it's going to be a movie for kids.
Well, but I figured because it's based on a board game, it would be a more camp version of a murder mystery.
I
Also,
supposedly.
like, Scooby-Doo is for kids.
But just because it's PG doesn't make it for kids. Because back then,
I didn't say that.
No, but back then they didn't have PG-13.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the rating at all.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying if you went into this thinking it was going to be for kids because it's based on a game that children play.
Now, you keep saying that, but I think adults play the game. I think it's a board game for everybody, not just kids. And it's a pretty, like, I don't want to say high concept, but it's not like a hungry hippos.
I just believe in my heart of hearts that anytime somebody makes a movie that is based on the source material is game, I think people categorize that as a children's film.
I guess Jumanji makes you think that. Do you think Battleship is a children's movie?
I think it is for young boys, yes.
All right, I agree to disagree. One other thing I wanted to note is we've watched almost in homage to Clue when we watched Psych, because there's an episode called 100 Clues, and it has Christopher Lloyd, Martin Mull, Michael McKean, and they're in a mansion, and they're all basically just doing Clue again, and James Roday is the Tim Curry character running around.
Wow, I very much have forgotten that, but I would rewatch it.
Yeah, I'll rewatch that episode, maybe tonight.
Okay.
On my birthday.
Sure.
So that's the movie Clue, folks. It's a good movie. That's what they're saying out here. Any other things you want to mention about the movie?
Where can people watch it if they want to watch it?
YouTube TV is where we watched it.
Okay, great. Hope everyone has YouTube TV.
Okay. Well, I don't know why it matters now. They've seen it or they haven't.
Right.
But talking about movies we're watching, what is going to be our next movie, Catherine?
Okay, I'm so excited because you know that I have wanted you to watch this movie for a long time.
I watched Little Women last week.
No. I have picked this movie because it is not a period piece. I feel like we've watched a couple of those. It's a different genre than our last few, but it is also based on a game in a way. And this movie is the 2017 Jessica Chastain film Molly's Game.
Oh, okay. I honestly thought you were going to bring up Game Night as your choice in movie when you're saying that.
I really want us to watch Game Night, but you have to rent it. They took it off of the streaming platforms.
Well, we can rent it. It's like $3 to rent.
I know, but I feel
it's fine. We can watch Molly's Game.
I made everyone rent Little Women. And I feel like they've had to rent a few for this season, so I'm trying to make it so you don't have to rent. You should be able to watch Molly's Game on Netflix.
Okay, awesome. Then we'll watch Molly's Game. A game I think you mentioned kind of what it's about. Queen's Gambit is chess. I think this is poker. Anyways, we'll check this movie out and we'll talk about it next week. Folks, this is a good movie podcast with Katie and Joe. I want to do a quick thanks to Carrie Pulley, who designed our logo for the podcast. I'd like to thank Kale Forbes for editing and creating our theme song with vocals by Austin Fry. I'd like to recommend all of you to follow us on our social media, Instagram at TIAGMPod. You can email us at TIAGMPodcast@gmail.com. With any questions or things you want us to watch or look into. More importantly, it would be very helpful if you subscribe on YouTube to This Is a Good Movie Podcast. You can just search This Is a Good Movie Podcast and any movie we've talked about, and just subscribe to our feed. That'd be really helpful, and maybe eventually we can have some sort of revenue stream and pay for these rentals that we're doing for these movies. But thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week. And happy birthday to me.
We love you. Bye.
And Katie, you haven't said it. Happy birthday to me.
This is a good movie podcast with Katie and Joe.